This is Christopher Shaw with 80 Central, and I recently had the pleasure of talking with Martin Fry of ABC while he was on vacation in Barbados just before heading out on the road with Howard Jones for a spring tour of the States. Now, Martin talks about the Lexicon of Love, its lasting impact, the story behind the song When Smokey Sings, and the band's legacy. So enjoy the interview, and don't forget to like and subscribe to 80 Central's YouTube page. And download our app so you can listen to 80 Central's internet radio station whenever you want. 80 Central, turn it on and leave it on.
I'm in Barbados today, and what have we got? Yeah, about midday.
Okay. Having a little vacation?
Yeah. Heading off to the gym, pre-tour workout.
Very good. Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about the tour real quick. Going out with Howard Jones, hitting a lot of places here in America, of course, in San Antonio. Just talk about how the tour came about and, your thoughts on it.
Cannot wait to get to Texas with ABC. We haven't played there for a long, long time, so this is a great opportunity to come and say hello. I've been in a band now for 40 years, believe it or not, and ABC started all those years ago up in Sheffield, England, in the early days of MTV. I used to cross paths with Howard through the 1980s. And again, in recent years, and we decided to go on tour together. Musically, it complemented each other. And we did a tour in August, September of about 16 dates through America. And it worked like a dream. Yeah, it was two new wave legends together. And we had some wonderful, wonderful evenings. So, I mean, after 40 years, it felt like some of the strongest shows we've done. So we performed. So it felt right to kind of go out on phase 2. And that's what we're doing in February, out on tour together, opening up.
Yeah, and you're going to be here Valentine's Day. What a perfect time to be here in San Antonio.
I have a song called Valentine's Day, so I'm going to get the band to dust that one off. It was a song on our first album, Lexicon of Love. Yeah, Valentine. When the postman don't call on Valentine's Day. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, it has been so long since that, but since the Lexicon of Love, but it sounds just as fresh today, I believe, as it did back then. Just talk to your thoughts about that album, maybe even some of the making of, but just your thoughts 40 years later, and it's still just as timeless as ever.
I'm lucky because I get the chance to travel through Europe and play in Britain. We play a big orchestral show based on the Lexicon of Love, our first album, which did contain a lot of love songs and had a loose thread to it. And in recent years, it's been great to get on stage with 55 people, with the band, with the orchestra, with the conductor, and play songs off that record. So it's kind of stood by me through all these years. Every song you write, you want to get to number one. But the Lexicon of Love with The Look of Love, All of My Heart, Tears Not Enough, Poison Arrow on it. Yeah, that came out all those years ago, produced by Trevor Horn, one of the Buggles. And Trevor, I think it was the first album Trevor produced outside of his own work. Then he's obviously gone to produce some incredible records through the years. He's a wonderful record producer, still is.
How integral was he?
Pardon?
How integral was he in kind of honing the sound in on the Lexicon of Love?
Well, we had a fully formed sound because we were a band.
Sure.
We were out there and we had the songs, but we had heard a song called Handheld in Black and White on the radio that Trevor had produced, a single for somebody, and it sounded incredible. It sounded like it was coming from the future. The best music sounds like it comes from the near future, doesn't it? When you first hear it, you first hear the Stones, you first hear the Who. It just sounds like from another planet. So it was kind of like that kind of took us to him. We were very lucky because it was a great kind of team. Yeah. Collaborative spirit, and great stuff would happen every 20 minutes in that recording studio. Do you know what I mean? It was a very creative time, So I think some of that joy that went into the record has definitely kind of meant that it's still popular all these years on. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, were you surprised at the immediate success? I mean, it kind of steamrolled,
Well, it meant that we could come to America. Yeah, it meant the gateways were opening for all those British acts back then in the early 80s. I don't know if you remember, but,
Oh, yeah.
the Police and the Pretenders and all those guys, ourselves included, were all climbing on a plane and coming to New York to try and break America. We had a hit with Tears Not Enough, our first single in the UK, but no, with Poison Arrow, with The Look of Love, it definitely took us a stage further. So you never really know. Whenever you make a record, it never feels like it's finished. Do you know what I mean? It was like kind of, so I'm very grateful and pleased and humbled to be able to stand on a stage now, 40 years on, and still play those songs. Yeah, it feels good. And to an audience that's, wants to hear it.
Sure. Talk to me about those days back then, because they call it the new romantic period, or the second British
Yeah.
invasion. You had Howard Jones, you had Human League, Culture Club, yourself, ABC. There were just it must have been a fertile ground of creativity back then. Did you feel that amongst your peers when you're all around each other?
Absolutely. It was really, really competitive. Only one record could get to number one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You used to kind of walk down South Molton Street. There was a shop down the end that used to sell all the clothes, the top clobber. And if you were doing Top of the Pops, the big TV show, you'd shoot down there to get some stage wear. Well, I'd see like Boy George walking down the road, so everybody was flooding down to this spot to get it was very competitive just to buy a jacket to wear on TV. So it was competitive to get to number one. In a way, though, when I see bands like Duran Duran still playing great shows in the present day, Tears for Fears, Billy Idol. I played the Cruel World Festival in Pasadena a couple of years ago and realized that on the bill was like the Human League, Gary Newman, Susie Banshee, Iggy Pop, Echo and the Bunnymen, all these acts from when I first started out. It made me realize how durable that sound is. And in a way, in America, I think people are reevaluating the new wave era. It's almost like there's a younger audience coming through from hearing stuff on Stranger Things and various TV shows and coming to the shows. So it feels good. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and of course,
well, I love all these bands now, but I used to hate them back then. Back in the day, it was so competitive. It was like playing professional football or, baseball. You had to, you wanted to get to number one in the league, But now I can chill a little bit. And it's a happy family. So with Howard, for example, it's great. When Team ABC meets Team Howard Jones, we get to create the magic.
What were some of your favorite albums back then that were coming out? Did you obviously had a chance to kind of peruse and listen to some of your peers? Were you into some of the ones that
Oh,
you just mentioned?
absolutely. I listened to stuff like Tears for Fears are an incredible band.
Yeah.
The quality of their songwriting. Bowie, obviously, for me. Squitty Politti, there was a band called Squitty Politti. I used to get jealous, man. I used to think, I'm not really a green envy, jealous kind of guy. I've had a wonderful, wonderful, fulfilling career, but sometimes I think, man, I wished I'd written that song. There was a lot of bands that weren't that popular, like Prefab Sprout.
Sure.
But Squitty Politti were phenomenal. Yeah, they were produced by Arif Mardin. They made some incredible records.
Yes.
So I'm a fan.
Was a good one.
I think Squeeze, the quality of the songwriting differed in Tilbrook. Yeah, still to this day. There were so many magic moments in that era when I first came through. So I was really lucky with ABC to be competing with the best. It makes you work hard.
Sure.
It makes you kind of try and be your best.
Right. Do you remember your first gig in America? Because obviously,
yes, I do.
Everybody, wants to break in America. So
I wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat and remember it. Yeah, yeah. I think we played Phoenix because we were the darlings of the UK music scene. We got our platinum album and our David Bowie would be standing in the wings checking the band out, and in the UK,
right.
There'll be thousands of people shouting and screaming. Then we got to Phoenix on a Tuesday afternoon in 1981, and we realized Phoenix wasn't quite ready for our new romantic vision. And I stood on that stage in my sparkling tuxedo, and there was the violinists. And it was a bit like that scene in the Blues Brothers. They had the chicken wire across the front of the stage for the protection of not for the protection of the audience, for the protection of the artist. And I thought to myself, well, Martin, you've got your work cut out. You're bringing your new pop vision to America. Sure. But there was that thing called MTV in some people's living rooms that kind of sped things along. So it felt good to win an American audience over, but it was very hard at first. Yeah,
sure.
Very hard.
Well, you just mentioned MTV, and it was obviously the biggest radio.
It's much more fun now, I should add.
When I get
out on stage now, when I put my sparkling tuxedo on, there's an audience there jumping up and down, loving it.
But MTV really, helped. I mean, it was the biggest radio station in the world. I mean, a lot of people, and you're one of the bands that took advantage of that. They seen that this was the new medium to get, not only the music, but the aesthetic of the band out to everybody.
Yeah, very much so. It was kind of revolutionary, really. I remember going for dinner with some of the people from MTV, and there was about 5 people. People forget that MTV wasn't always a massive corporation. It just started off like a small cottage
Mhm.
industry radio station, and they'd have a couple of things to play back then in the early days. So yeah, it was great to kind of get a free cheeseburger sometimes when somebody recognized me from those videos. Look of Love, Poison Arrow, that stuff. Yeah.
Did you see the immediate impact? Because
Yeah.
I've talked to many bands. They say, "Oh, the day after our video went to the heavy airplay, you'd go down the street and people were either recognizing you, noticing you, and it felt like night and day." You know.
Yeah, it felt great. I mean, it's always good when, even now, Chris,
Mhm.
all these years on, people give me the sidelong glance and they go, I think I know you from somewhere. And they usually think you're their cousin, not, and you're giving them the cold shoulder,
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's great being famous in certain locations. Do you know what I mean? It's great. So, yeah, MTV definitely took us forward. Yeah.
You mentioned earlier David Bowie, and I heard a story that during the Lexicon of Love, David Bowie made a kind of an appearance, or at least
Yeah.
you'd met. Can you talk about that little a meeting with David?
We're recording with Trevor. We're doing like Poison Arrow, I think, and Look of Love. And then we have to move studios. We're in Sam East and we go, right, where should we work today? And Tony Visconti had a studio called Good Earth in Soho, in the center of London.
Hmm.
So we go there on the Wednesday and I'm kind of in the latrine. Is that the correct? In the toilet with Mark White
Yep.
guitarist. We have it. And then we can hear this voice go behind us going, look at you, pissing with the big dogs. I turn around and it's like David Bowie holding a cup of tea. You know what I mean? Like, so two things really. Nobody ever talks to each other in the restroom, do they? In a gentleman's restroom, it's a given. You never speak to anyone.
No.
But there's Bowie, man. He's there visiting Tony Visconti, his producer, and he's doing Ball, a Bertolt Brecht play in London, and he's just come to hang out. So he hangs out in the studio with us, with Trevor, and he seemed to like the atmosphere. We're having a laugh and a joke. We were freaking out because it's David Bowie, we're making our first record. But he was very complimentary, yeah, and he hung out for a couple of hours, and he was really, really friendly, and gracious
Mhm.
to this young band from Sheffield. So he made a couple of suggestions to the track, and we're doing some keyboard overdubs on the 12-inch for the Look of Love that day. Yeah, so in a way, he sprinkled a bit of his magic stardust on us. Yeah,
Oh,
his magic
nice.
dust on us. You know, because it was for us, it was like mind blowing. It's
Yeah.
like meeting your hero. Yeah, so it was good.
It was that must have been an amazing,
Actually, also, he
Yeah.
came to the show we did at the Hammersmith Odeon, yeah, and watched the show from the side of the stage. But nobody told me that at the time because they said if they told me, I would just freak out. So I only found out later, yeah, after I'd done the gig. Yeah.
Here in America, we've really, kind of taken in all your music. But there's one song that I mentioned, oh, ABC, and you'd think it'd be "Look of Love, Poison Arrow," but in America,
Yeah.
it's "When Smokey Sings." It's
Yeah.
it's just one of those tunes that gets people up and dancing. But tell me, it's obviously a tribute to
Yeah.
a lot of the R&B artists, Smokey. In fact, I believe when Smokey Sings and "One Heartbeat" by Smokey were in the top 10 at the same time in '87.
Yeah.
So, but can you tell me
Well,
about that song and just what is it about that song that's so special for you?
well, I came to a point around about 86. I had a really tough point in my life. I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, a form of cancer, and I had to have chemotherapy, and everything stopped. I was meant to go on tour with Tina Turner, and everything stopped. So I'm sitting at home, getting well, getting the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy. I was 27 years old, and I started just playing my favorite songs. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
when you play your favorite music just in the privacy of your own little room, you kind of go back, and it was such a comfort and it felt great. So I wrote the song When Smokey Sings about how great all those Motown tunes were and how uplifting, listening to Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye and Bowie and Brian Ferry and Roxy Music and all these acts. But When Smokey Sings came from that, yeah, the love of music. And it was wonderful because we put the single out and it was one of those bulletproof records. Wherever you played it to the record company, they said, right, that's a hit. And it isn't always like that, you know what I mean? But on this occasion, it's like, sounds great, guys, bang. And it wasn't long before our record was in the top 5 in the USA, as was Smokey Robinson's. I think it was Being With You. I might be wrong. So we
One
both
heartbeat.
had a
One
record in
heartbeat.
the One Heartbeat.
Yep.
Sorry, you're a better research
That's
detective
okay.
than I am. And we met Smokey Robinson on a TV show, and he invited us down to Motown, where he was I think he was the chairman of Motown at the time. Yeah, he was
Mhm.
the CEO of Motown. And he sent me a handwritten letter just saying how touched and happy and pleased he was that we'd paid tribute to the music and to him and the whole thing. So a lot of good things came from that record. Yeah, When Smokey Sings. Yeah, a lot of good
No,
things.
it's just a really special song, and it just showcased the maturity of the songwriting too.
Well, yeah, you
That you guys
change as
did.
you kind of grow through the years. Yeah, and you kind of want different things from songs. Sometimes when I was starting out, I would try and make things as complicated as possible and try and show off with the wordplay. But
Hmm.
gradually, you kind of find your own way of doing things and simplify things a little bit. Yeah.
Sure.
Plus, it was really nice to showcase somebody else. I talk a lot about myself. It's not too healthy sometimes, so it's nice to kind of think about somebody else. Yeah, in that song.
You had a biography recently come out. I believe it was last year, The
Yeah,
Lexicon of
mainly
Grief.
for the
That thing
UK
is
and
massive.
Europe.
I was seeing the book. I saw an interview you did, and that thing is pretty massive that you put out. Talk to me a little bit about that. And
Yeah, it started off as an art book. So there's one version of the book which is wrapped in gold lame, like some of the suits I wear and tuxedos I've worn in the past. And it contains a lot of photography, but it's also a book I've written. Yeah, my story of my life, and various adventures I've been on in the world of music.
Mhm.
And then there's a smaller book about So Big, which is wrapped in something else, equally dandy-fied, and but it's kind of mainly for the UK audience. But I think you can buy it if you can ship it. I've got to check that out to the
Sure.
USA. But yes, it felt right to kind of look back and kind of take stock of the many years I've had making music. Yeah, especially now. I'm in a good place now.
Right.
It's life is good on the road.
I mean, last question, just talking about ABC's influence, because in that first wave of that new romantic
Yeah.
period, Duran Duran yourself, you've influenced everybody. Even in the 80s, I felt a little bit of ABC and like the Pet Shop Boys, or you go through all these bands, just now you're seeing kind of the influence of ABC in that whole period. It must make you proud.
It does in a way, yeah, because back in the day, I was fiercely competitive, like I say, with everybody else.
Mhm.
But when I played a show in February, yeah, the Pet Shop Boys came to the show, and watched the show. That felt good. And as I say, it's nice to meet young artists that have gone back and researched. They've gone back many years and researched the 1980s, and you can hear kind of the influence in some of the pop hits of today too, in the production styles, with The Weeknd and Lady Gaga sometimes, and sometimes acts go back, and
Yeah.
especially if they put keyboards on the tracks. Um, but it's amazing, really. That is one of the most exciting things. That, and standing on a stage and seeing the smile on people's faces when they come to the shows. But when you get in touch, when somebody gets in touch and says, I really enjoyed this record, Martin, one of your AB Look of Love or something, and you realize that it's kind of nice to pass the baton on to other musicians,
Mhm.
as we move through time. See you
Thank
on
you
the
so much for
14th.
giving me a few minutes here, buddy.
Take care, Chris. Bye
All
bye.
right. Thank you.